Hi everyone, it is Alison from Crochet Connections, and today for my very first video I thought I would do an introduction to crochet, and I thought I would start off with a little bit of information on crochet. And I found some pretty interesting things. It turns out that the basic idea of crochet has been around since about the 1500s, which is the 14th century. But the first recorded pattern emerged around 1824. But there wasn't any standardized stitches. So you might have been working on a pattern for an 8-pointed star that might have come out with 6 points. So I thought that was very interesting. And I have two websites that I looked up and I thought were quite interesting, and they were very easy to read, and I will put the links in at the end of this little introduction. But they are allfreecrochet.com has an article called Evolution of Crochet, and you can also get some really great patterns on there for free, as it mentions All Free Crochet. The only thing with that website is they are in US American terms, whereas my blog is focusing on European Australian terms. And the other website was Habitual Homebody, and she had an article, I think it was a series called Crafting Through History, and one of the articles was the history of crochet. And it was a very interesting article, and once again I will put a link to it. I'll put the address of the article. Okay, so moving on to some of the very basic tools you will need to start crochet. The very first thing you will need will be some yarn, and I have some basic yarn here. I have a couple of different variations. It is an 8-ply acrylic. It came in a 100-gram ball. I don't know what that is in ounces, and it comes with all the instructions on the label. It tells you what you can and can't do with it once you've made your garment or whatever you're using the yarn to make. For example, you can put it in a warm machine or hand wash it and use a cold rinse, but you cannot wring it. It says do not iron, do not tumble dry, but you can dry it flat in the shade. Do not use bleach on it, but it is dry cleanable. Now the next thing you need to know, which is quite important because it will be used in pretty much every pattern you will use, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 patterns when you get into crochet. It has a little diagram here, and it's called gauge. It'll tell you, this one has knitting needles, it'll tell you how many stitches. For example, this one is a 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter square. It'll tell you how many stitches across and how many rows up will make that 10 centimeter square. In this case, it will be 22 stitches across and 30 rows up. Now for crochet, you will use a double crochet stitch. So you will make a chain, and I suggest you do more than 22 chains, and you will go back and do your double crochets, and then I also suggest you do more than 30 rows, and then you measure somewhere in the middle of those rows. And then the suggested hook size is a 4mm, and then if your gauge does not match that, if your stitches are too big, then you might need to use a smaller hook, or if the stitches are too small, you might need to use a bigger hook. So we'll learn more about gauge a bit later on. And another example, this is also an 8-ply, 100 grams. I got this ball at Spotlight. It has basically the same instructions. It is also a 4mm hook, and it also has 22 stitches and 30 rows for a 10 centimeter square. And these two acrylics are really great to learn with because they have a really good texture. As you can see, they've got they're not like really super smooth, so that means they like sort of they're easy to hold and they sort of grab a little bit. And they're really good because they're not expensive. This ball was like $3 and this one was about, I think about $2.50 or something, or $2.75. But Spotlight is where I got this one from. They don't have this brand anymore, unfortunately. But like I said, these are both 8-ply and they're both great yarn to work with because they're not super smooth. Whereas I have this really beautiful yarn. It's a soft yarn, and it's like a premium yarn. This was a more expensive yarn. It was I think $4 or $5 for the ball, and if you look at it, it is really soft and it just slides through your fingers so easy that when I first used it I had a lot of trouble using it. So just when you buy your balls of yarn, just be aware of that. See, this is also a 4mm hook, and it also has the same tension of 22 stitches across by 30 rows for a 10cm square. And one more thing I just need to point out, you have to be careful because even though sometimes two yarns will both be 8-ply, you can't see it very well, but these two yarns aren't the exact same thickness. This orange is a tiny little bit thinner. And I have a yellow one here. It, once again, if I pull that taut against the other two, it's thinner than both the blue and the orange as well, and it too is an 8-ply. So you have to be just wary of that. But like I said, 8-ply is a great place to start. And now we'll learn about crochet hooks. This is what a crochet hook looks like. It's like basically like a pencil with a hook on the end and a flat little bit here, which will have the information on what size hook it is. And that's usually where your thumb and fingers will grip, because it's a great place to hold on to. And I don't actually know what this inside of this hook is called. I know it does have a name, but I can't think of it at the moment. And you can get two types of hooks. This one is got more of a point on it, and you can get ones that have more of a rounded end on them, but I prefer the ones that have got slightly more of a point. They're still very smooth, they just have slightly more of a point. And of course you can get these in different sizes. I just have my 4mm out at the moment because that's the matching hook for my yarn. And you can get these in different colours as well. Next thing you will need is scissors. I have embroidery scissors, office scissors. Any type of scissors you have will work just as well. And a ruler of some sort. I usually use a dressmaker's tape, which is one of these type of measurers. You'll see they're the ones that roll up. So there we go. And that is the very, very basics of what you'll need to crochet. If I think of anything else, I will let you know. Now, the basics to starting to crochet. There are two main starting points to crochet. The first one is this, which is called a slip knot. And I'll just get my hook. See how it's kind of large at the moment? I'll make it bigger. You put your hook in there and you make it smaller. It slips. We will learn how to do that. Another way is called a magic ring, which is a more advanced technique. Another method you will learn is the chain. I don't have a swatch done up of chain at the moment, but I will show you a swatch of all our other stitches that we will learn in this series. I've done them in these pretty colours and I have not fastened off. So we start at the bottom here. This is called a double crochet, and in American terms it is called a single crochet, and I've started off down the bottom with a chain stitch. You won't be able to see it because we've actually worked into the chain down the bottom here. So we've got our double crochet, which is equal in height when you want to turn a row to one chain up. Then our second stitch is called a half treble crochet. It is equal in height to 2 chains when you want to turn a row and work back across. So it's taller than this, but not as tall as a treble crochet. And a treble crochet is equal in height to 3 chains up. And so if you want to do 2 rows, you will do your treble, get to the end, chain 3, turn, and continue trebles, if that's what your pattern says. This next stitch up here is called a double treble, and it is equal in height to 4 stitches. And you can see how the gaps start down here from being very tight. Got a little bit of stretch. We get more stretch with the half trebles. The trebles get more stretch, and the double trebles get even lots of stretch. And then I've done a couple of doubles at the top to show you the height difference. It's quite amazing, isn't it? So we will be learning all these stitches, and after we've done that, we'll learn how to do increases and decreases in each video when I teach you the stitch. For example, when I teach you how to do a double crochet, we'll also learn how to do an increase and a decrease. Same with the half treble and double treble. And then later on we'll learn how to do other specialized stitches such as post crochet, learning front post and back post, and loop crochet, learning how to crochet into just the back loop or the front loop and certain things like that. And we'll also learn different stitches as we go on and get better. So I think I have covered everything, and now we're going to learn how to do the very start of crochet. And I will cover this in each stitch video as well. So the easiest way to start to do your slip knot that I have found, I learnt from Mikey the Crochet Crowd, is to get your yarn, just lay your hand flat, and you'll be using these 2 fingers mostly. Lay your yarn flat over your hand like this. I'm only using one hand at the moment. Get your thumb and lay it on your strand on your middle finger. So you're holding that now with your middle finger. Leave a little bit of a gap between your ring finger and your finger down here, your middle finger and your ring finger. Then you will put a little bit of tension on your yarn, and this is called your working yarn now, and you'll bring it into this gap. Can you see how it's in that gap? That's good. And we've still got a little bit of tension on. We want to wrap back over the top of our fingers and bring it back into that gap, and we want to hold it with our thumb and ring finger. So we'll put it back on our fingers and hold it, and we've still got a little bit of tension on our yarn. Not too much, because we want to be able to move it. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to get this piece of yarn and we're going to move it in front here. We're going to take it up and over to the front of this loop, but we're going to leave it on our fingers. So we're just going to pick it up, take it over the front, and just leave it there like that. Now we're going to get this piece that is now at the back. We're going to pick it up and take it up and over and completely off our fingers. Take it up, over and off. And now just pull these 2 fingers up and away. And then you just pull these 2 strands down a bit. Put your hook in your hole and just find which strand moves. And that is how you do your slip knot. Now I always find when I crochet, I hold my crochet hook like a pencil, and I use my middle finger to hold my loops when I'm working. If I've got to do something and drop my working yarn I always use my middle finger. Other people I know like to use their crochet hook like you do with like a knife and fork, cutting and so on, and they use their pointer finger. Okay, and I like to hold my yarn just like this. I use scissor fingers and gun finger, I call it. I just hold my yarn in my fist to begin with, so like this. Then I get my scissor fingers, I go through my scissor fingers, then I go over my gun fingers, and then I go back to my scissor fingers, and I will use my middle finger and my thumb to hold my work. It's very important that you hold your work down here when you're beginning so that you can keep a nice tension and it makes it easier. Another way to hold your yarn, if you find that's too loose, is you lay it over your middle finger, just your middle finger, and wrap it around once. Keep it a little bit loose. Come up to your scissor fingers up here, and just repeat what I did before. Go through and over your gun fingers, use your middle finger and your thumb, and once again hold your crochet hook in your preferred way. That's 2 ways to hold your yarn. So now we're going to learn the chain stitch. Okay, so get your yarn in your preferred holding method. And once again, as I said, I've got my my middle finger and my thumb holding my knot here, and I've got a little bit of tension. At the moment I'm using my crochet hook to pull up because I find it easier when I'm making chains. Later on I will use my thumb and middle finger to pull down just a little bit. So I'll get my yarn in position I want it. Okay. And I'll zoom in a little bit. Can you see how I have my hook on my finger here, and my hook is facing down, meaning this part here is facing down. That's the way we want to hold our hook. The next part is called a yarn over. We're going to aim our hook in here. We're going to go under our yarn, we're going to go behind it and over the top of our yarn. See how it is in between our loop and in between our hook. Now making sure we've still got a little bit of tension. This is where our tension comes into play now, it's very important. I've got my thumb and my ring finger and my middle finger on my knot so it won't get too tight. Got a little bit of tension on my loop here. I have my hook facing down, and I'm just going to pull my hook straight through, just very slowly, and pull the yarn straight through that loop. And I just accidentally pulled that off, so I'll just redo that. Okay, so I go back under, behind, and over the yarn. That's called a yarn over. And keeping tension by pulling up my hook, pull straight through, and just pull it out and up a little bit. There we go, we have our first chain. Now we're going to see how I've got my finger holding my loop up here so it doesn't go anywhere. I'm going to reposition our thumb and middle finger to hold that chain we just did. I've still got a little bit of tension and I've made my loop a little bit loose so it'll be easy to work with later. And we're going to repeat that. We're going to go under our yarn, around the back and over the top. And our hook is still facing down. It's going to pull straight through. There we go. Holding my loop, moving my thumb and middle finger. Going to repeat that. I'm going to yarn over, keeping my tension, pull straight through the loop and up. And I'm just going to do that a couple more times now. now that I have a couple more chains on, I'm going to just use my lower chain to keep the tension. And I'm just going to zoom out. So yarning over, pulling through and up. And if you make your loop a little bit too big like I did just then, that's where the tension on our finger comes in. Just pull your finger back a little bit. See, if I accidentally made my loop too big deliberately then I'm just going to pull on my finger till it makes it go small again. Okay, I'm happy with how big that is. I'm going to yarn over and pull through. And there we go, and that is how you do a chain stitch. And if we get a close-up here, you can see it's sort of like when you have a plait in your hair. It has like these bumps on the side, these ridges, and that tells you where one chain stitch is. And you can see these little V's. That is one chain stitch between my two thumbs there. And we are done. And I'll just show you the back. It's from the side. And they just have these little bumps. I don't know why. It's just the way the yarn pulls through. But you have successfully made a chain. In the next video, we will move on to making a double crochet, and we will go from working into the chain and working into a previous round, also doing increases and decreases. So go and practice your chaining, and hopefully you'll come back. Good luck!